Good evening. Could everyone please take their seats? Could everyone please take their seats? We're going to call the meeting to order. This is the October 11th, 2022 meeting of the Zoning Board of Appeals. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. All right, we'll do the roll. Chris Wolf.
Here.
Bill Soda.
Here.
Carmina Hirsch. Here. Gary Montano.
Here.
I'm Sarah Ferrante. I'm here. Also present, Meg Green, our recording secretary, and Stephen Harris, our zoning enforcement officer. Excused tonight, our chair, Joe Tizola, Gary Dubois, and Mike Smith. Ms. Hirsch, will you please sit in tonight and vote for Joe?
Happy to, Madam Chair.
Wonderful. And will you please act as our secretary tonight?
Absolutely.
Wonderful. And I will be acting as chair tonight. Okay. Ms. Hirsch, will you please start with Merwin?
Yes. Yes, Madam Chair. First agenda item, 114 Merwin Avenue. Kevin Kersadian Esquire for Peter Dreyer, appellant, 112 Merwin Avenue. Appeal the decision in accordance with the provisions of section 9.2.1 regarding decision to issue a zoning permit, date July 21st, 2022, for the construction of a single-family house in violation of zoning regulations.
Thank you. This item is going to be held over until November, so we're going to keep the hearing open and listen to the applicant then. Ms. Hirsch, will you please continue?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Second agenda item, 230 Old Gate Lane, MBP 79/811/8A, ID Jesse Langer Esquire for Bridgehaven Ford Truck Sales, Inc., owner. Request for approval of location in accordance with section 9.2.4 of the Milford zoning regulations.
Good evening, Madam Chair and board members. Jesse Langer of Updike Kelly and Spells on behalf of the applicant Bridgehaven Ford Truck Sales, Inc. With me today is John Schmitz, an engineer.
Attorney Langer, could
Yes.
you please pull the mic up?
Perfect.
You got to kind of put it really.
My apologies. With me today is John Schmitz of BL Companies, and Gabrielli is a family-owned business operating a commercial truck sales and service business, which they have done for over 50 years. They have truck dealerships in the tri-state area as well as throughout New England. Gabrielli is also a proud corporate citizen of Milford. They have an existing dealership at 401 Old Gate Lane, and they recently acquired a dealership, the Kenworth dealership, over at 312 Woodmont Road. Now, Gabrielli is looking to expand its footprint in Milford to 230 Old Gate Lane. Gabrielli is proposing a significant redevelopment of the old Connecticut limousine property into one of their state-of-the-art truck dealerships. The proposal will significantly enhance the existing conditions as well as increasing positive economic activity in Milford. On July 6, 2022, the Inland Wetland Agency approved the project. Importantly, the redevelopment will significantly enhance the drainage capabilities of the property. And on September 22nd, as set forth in the staff report, the Planning and Zoning Board approved the applicant's special permit and CAM review, as well. And that application included a detailed analysis of the zoning compliance regarding section 5.4 of the zoning regulations regarding automotive use. And shortly thereafter, the Sewer Commission approved the existing connection administratively on September 19th. So the property is zoned industrial, and the surrounding area is also zoned industrial, light industrial, shopping center district, and interchange commercial district. So with the proximity to I-95 and the Milford Commercial Corridor, it's an ideal location for this new dealership. The closest school is 2,500 feet away from the proposed, from the property. The closest church is over 4,000 feet from the property, and the closest movie theater is over 1,000 feet, but separated by I-95. It's associated with the mall. And I'm now going to ask Mr. Schmitz just to give a very, very brief overview of the proposal, and we're, of course, available to answer any questions you might have.
Hi, good evening. For the record, my name is John Schmitz. I'm a civil engineer with BL Companies, 355 Research Parkway, Meriden, Connecticut. Just briefly, I'll walk you through the site plan. As Attorney Langer indicated, the property is on 230 Oldgate Lane. It's taking over the former Connecticut Limousine building. The building will be reused, and all the driveways will be the same. So as far as the development goes, the improvements we're making are mostly cosmetic. The building facade will be painted, new windows, new doors, that sort of thing. New landscaping throughout the building and new paving. But for the most part, the building is staying the same. The site will look very much the same, making improvements to stormwater, things of that such. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? So just to clarify, this has been approved by Inlands, Wetlands, and Planning and Zoning?
That's correct.
Okay, fantastic. All right. Is there anyone speaking in favor of this application? Is there anyone opposed? Any more questions? Okay. This hearing is closed.
Madam Chair, if I could just say a few words.
Yes.
This is not your usual type of application in that the board is acting as an agent of the state. So in other words, you don't have to make a finding of a hardship. You're tasked with finding that the location is appropriate and approved for this site.
Okay. So no hardship necessary. Location is appropriate. This has been approved by other boards prior to us. What are we thinking?
I make a motion to approve the location.
Second.
Okay, Mr. Wolf,
I'm with the motion.
Mr. Soto,
With the motion.
Ms. Hirsch,
With the motion.
Mr. Montano.
With the motion.
I'm with the motion.
Thank you for your time.
Third agenda item, 25 Shell Street, MBP 45/510/85, R-12.5, Thomas Lynch Esquire for Seashell LLC owner, vary section 6.2.1 to allow renovation and enlargement of structure devoted to a non-conforming residential use with no increase in unit count.
That's good, Steve. Thank you so much. All right. Good evening, Madam Chairman and members of the board. Just for the record, my name is Thomas Lynch. I'm an attorney with the law firm of Lynch, Trimbicki, and Boynton, and my office is located at 63 Cherry Street. And I've spent the last few minutes out in the hallway. The first item was having to do with car dealerships, and I almost feel like I was trying to be a car salesman out there, but I think we've made some progress, and hopefully we'll address some of the issues that some of the neighbors on Shell Street have raised since this application was first filed. So I'm here tonight with my client, Margaret Stryker, who's seated in the front row. Margaret's company, Seashell LLC, is the owner of 25 Shell Avenue. Margaret and her family have an extensive background in developing real estate properties in New York City, New York State, and Connecticut. She's also a resident here in Milford. She and her family have a beautiful home on Trumbull Avenue overlooking the harbor. And one of the family's finest projects happens to be a prior project that was done here in Milford. We're all familiar with the former Fort Trumbull Hotel that's located on Trumbull Avenue right near the entrance to the Milford Yacht Club. A number of years ago, Margaret's family purchased that property and used the services of our good friend, who's unfortunately since passed, Ray Oliver, who designed a beautiful building on that site. It was turned into condominiums, and it's a real showplace along the shoreline in Milford. And that's what Margaret wants to do with this property at 25 Shell Avenue. We're before you tonight with an application to vary Section 621 to allow the enlargement and alteration of a structure that has been devoted for almost 100 years to a legal, non-conforming use. So we've run into these applications in the past after Sandy and Irene, where folks had properties along the shore that because of damage they wanted to rebuild. If they had 2 cottages on one lot, they wanted to either restore both of the cottages, or, as this board knows with the recent case that was brought before you on Maddox Avenue, they come before you with a request to basically enlarge or alter a two-family situation by having two cottages removed from the property and 1 two-family residence, which is actually larger than the combination of the 2 cottages, be constructed. So 621 of our regulations really has some terms in there that are open to interpretation. And when I first began the administrative process of having this project renewed by David Sulkus, I had a Zoom meeting with David and Joe Griffith. I think Stephen was a part of it as well. And I argued the position that based upon the Maddox Avenue case, that we didn't even need to come before this board to seek enlargement of the structure, because the number of units currently in the building at 25 Shell Avenue will not be extended. There's 9 apartments in that building, and there'll be 9 units in the new building as proposed. So I was making the argument that based upon what happened with the Maddox Avenue case, and one of the legal issues in that case was an interpretation of whether or not Joe Griffith and Stephen had the right to make a determination that in that case it was not an enlargement of a non-conforming use, and the court upheld the case. There were other issues that were in play, but one of the issues that was discussed in the decision was that not increasing the unit count did not constitute an enlargement under this section. So we basically took that position, and I think the office has taken a position that's different than the Maddox Avenue case. Perhaps the office feels that there was a misreading of the regulation, but the problem is both David Sulkus and Joe Griffith told myself and my client, go to the Zoning Board of Appeals and get a variance. So that's why we're here. We don't feel we should be here, but we're here. Now, just a little bit of background on 25 Shell. It's a very dilapidated building. It's located in Zone 7-5, but it is a legal non-conforming use. And Stephen has on the screen the existing conditions. Ray Oliver has designed a beautiful building to replace this structure. And the key point is that the new building will be zoning compliant. So in other words, we're not taking a building, renovating it, or tearing it down and expanding it and asking for a variance of setbacks or lot coverage or setbacks from the street or the building coverage. The new building will be zoning compliant. So the current building is not zoning compliant. It doesn't meet the building code standards. It doesn't meet the standards of the FEMA zone that it's located in. And our contention to you is that a hardship exists here, and under state law and court cases have held that by reducing or removing a existing nonconformity such as this, where it's not FEMA compliant, where it's not building code compliant, that constitutes the grounds for a legal hardship. I also make the argument to you that because of the fact that there's, in my view, a very distinct situation which allows two interpretations to be read in the zoning regulation, I think that that creates a legal hardship as well. So if Stephen can go through the elevations of the new building. So on the chart, if you were able to enlarge the Codispoti site plan that they gave you, it does reference the proposed dwelling and how the coverages are in relation to our zoning regulations. So in terms of like the building coverage is some 18% of the property. It's a very large piece of property along the shore, so it's nearly an acre in size. So that this proposed building is only going to be 18% coverage on the lot. The lot coverage itself is slightly higher, 30%, but it's far below the 65% that's permitted in the R75 zone. The other point that I want to make is if this application isn't granted, my client has the ability to look at various options that she has. The structure can be removed. By my calculation, there's some 4 building lots that can be subdivided on that property. Building lots on the shore are now selling for $1 million. So 4 houses could go on this property. And if people are concerned about the water views or the lot coverage or the size of this building compared to the size of the building that it's replacing, my response, and I had the conversation with a couple of the neighbors and their attorney in the hallway, my response is, this is a beautiful building that's going to go on here to take an eyesore away from the neighborhood. And in my view, in my client's view, and that's why we're here tonight, because she has entertained those options, she's chosen that she doesn't want to pursue those options. She wants to take the existing building, renovate it, make it a beautiful asset to the neighborhood. And, I think that this is a reasonable request, especially in light of the fact that the building itself will be zoning compliant. Again, I started my comments to you about storm-damaged houses and post-Sandy and Irene renovations along the shoreline, and we know full well going down Seaview Avenue or going down East Broadway that what resulted in applications coming before the board during that period of time after 2011 and 2012, people built much larger houses, maintained the non-conforming setbacks. That's not the situation here. This is going to be an expansion of the structure of a building that has been used as a legal non-conforming use for over 90 years, and that's it. There's not going to be any extension of the use itself. And when Ray designed the building, it was designed to meet that standard with the unit count remaining at 9 and not increasing above the current building's unit count. The last thing I wanted to go through, Stephen, just the floor plan. Now, the new building is going to be some 12,500 square feet. It's going to have a single unit on the first floor of 2,300 square feet. There'll be 2 units on the second floor, roughly 1,300 square feet each. 4 units on the third floor between 1,200 and 1,300 square feet each, and then 1 penthouse unit on the fourth floor with approximately 2,600 square feet. The other feature here is that, and the neighbors know this far better than anybody else in this room, because they have to live with it and they've been looking at it for years and years. There's been transient tenants living in 25 Shell Avenue all these years. The plan is to build this building and to have it condominiumized. There'll be units, there'll be owners living on site, pride of ownership, okay, replacing transient apartment dwellers another factor that needs to be considered here as a plus for the neighborhood. So with all those arguments, again, this is a beautiful project. Margaret met with a number of the neighbors back in September. It seemed as though the major concern that neighbors had was the accessory building for the garage. So there's, as you see on the plans, Stephen, I think SP1 has the site plan. I don't know if that can be blown up right there. But on the western side of the property, there's a parking garage, and they will be double stacked. So in other words, there's 9 bays that will each hold 2 cars, so it would accomplish the goal of having 18 parking spaces for the 9 units. With the parking garage eliminated, and that's what I'm going to terminate my presentation to you. I had a discussion with Attorney Shansky out in the hallway. My client participated in the conversation, and she's offering to have the parking garage, because that seems to be something that the neighbors are not happy with, because it's going to block water views, or it may encroach on some of the neighbors, such as the Fuchses and Ms. Herman. She has agreed, and this has to, if approved tonight, this has to go to the Planning and Zoning Board for a coastal area management site plan approval. So the plans can't be changed now, but we would be happy to have on the record, public record, that if this application is approved, my client will remove the garage and make other arrangements in terms of spacing the parking on other areas on the site. So in other words, there'll be surface parking, there won't be the parking garage. So again, a beautiful project. This was the last project that Ray Oliver worked on before his passing. It's a clear indication of his work and the type of work he's done across Milford over the many years that he was with us. And I think the building and the plans speak for themselves. The last thing I wanted to get into the record, I asked Meg to have it added to the website this morning. There was a petition of neighbors who stated that they do not oppose the application for renovations and alteration of 25 Shell Avenue. It was signed by 21 neighbors in close proximity to the site. I'd just like to read it in the record, if I may. And it states, "Dear neighbor, as you may know, the current building known as 25 Shell Avenue is a bit of an eyesore, and many say devalues the entire block's property values. We have an opportunity to give this blemish on such a nice bucolic street a complete renovation. New ownership is proposing to completely renovate the building, squaring it off and adding more balconies in an effort to add aesthetic value to the entire avenue. The current building has an awkward shape from a quick-fix renovation decades ago and has not been properly maintained to match the neatly manicured neighboring homes. Important to note is that the newly renovated and altered building would consist of the same 9 units, and the new footprint would remain less than 50% or half of the zoning code maximum lot coverage. On-site parking will be added for the same number of units, which will help relieve any street burden presently caused by the site. One of the last projects designed by the late Milford architectural legend, Ray Oliver, the redesigned 25 Shell Avenue is beautiful. It keeps with the upscale neighborhood aesthetics, and we anticipate increases to the surrounding property values as well. The entire property will be landscaped beautifully and made to reflect the pleasant upscale neighborhood you all know and love. For far too long, this property has been neglected and has been an eyesore for the neighborhood. With this upgrade, we have an opportunity to remove the potential problems and issues that untended properties and transient tenancies commonly attract. Please join us by signing this petition to not oppose efforts to attain the approvals necessary to remodel, renovate, and alter 25 Shell Avenue while maintaining the current unit count and remaining well under the allowable zoning size limits. Thank you.
Yes, questions, Bill?
Attorney Lynch, I have a few questions. You mentioned Maddox Avenue. Did you say that went to court and was upheld?
Yes,
Okay.
the city won the case.
So I don't see any, do you have any before elevations?
The floor plans?
No, before elevation, existing elevations.
no, I didn't.
No? So are you increasing the footprint at all?
Yes.
Okay. But we don't even have an overlay of the old versus the new?
The first, Stephen, help? Help. There's an existing conditions survey, Bill?
Okay.
If you can follow the cursor. On the upper left, you can see that cursor going round and round. This is the new building, this square,
Okay.
and this dotted line is the existing building
Right.
Okay.
in the middle.
So what is the square footage increase?
7,500 to 12,500.
So, okay. And it meets all setbacks? You don't need any variance for setbacks?
Correct.
Okay. And you said they're not going to be apartments, they're going to be condos?
Yes.
Okay. That's all I have.
Any other questions?
Mr. Lynch,
Yes.
the garages has a mechanical lift, so you drive in, you have a machine
Yep,
that
they got
lifts
one
up,
of
and
those,
apparently the neighbors...
looks like an erector set.
Yep, familiar with those. And if that's eliminated with a subsequent P&Z meeting?
Yeah, Jeff Gordon's going to have to go back to the drawing board and put 18 parking spaces on site.
We're going to
Right.
wrap parking spaces all around the
And this
perimeter
goes
lot.
to the plan, I know I mentioned it, but this goes to the Planning and Zoning Board for site plan approval, so they're the ones who will confirm when I'm telling you about the garage being removed, and also A-OK, the parking layout, so.
Okay. Elimination completely of the structure and just have lots.
My client offered that to the neighbors.
Understood.
Out in the hallway,
And your client has owned this property for how long?
since last year.
Okay, about a year.
It was owned for over 50 years by Steve and John Chernock. Gary, you know. The Chernocks, Milford Automatics.
Yeah, Trianos. No further questions, thank you.
Is that?
Mr. Montano?
Attorney Lynch, you mentioned the penthouse on the 4th floor. What would be the height increase over the existing?
None.
No.
I just referred to it as a penthouse, meaning it was a large unit on the top floor.
Okay, there are 4 floors currently.
Yes.
The square foot change in each of the 9 apartments or condos is approximately 40%, would you say, give or take?
You know,
Math-
Gary,
quick math?
I don't have a floor plan of the existing building, but I would say that those apartments are probably 400, 500 square feet each,
And the-
maybe a little bit larger
And they're all 2-bedroom, no 3-bedroom,
in here.
in the new,
In the new, yes.
yes. As opposed to the old building that had 1 and 2 combinations?
I think they had efficiencies. Yeah. My client can answer that.
I apologize.
Give
Hi.
out your name and address.
Yes, hi, I apologize. I apologize, I'm Margaret Stryker. The present, I live on Trumbull Avenue.
Ma'am.
You need to speak right into the microphone. Yeah.
My
Also,
name is
you-
Margaret Stryker, and I live on Trumbull Avenue. The present layout right now is a combination of efficiencies, 1 bedrooms. There is 1 2-bedroom, and the current penthouse apartment, I believe, is already 4 bedrooms. And there's no increase in height to it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Attorney Lynch, I believe you mentioned 2 points of hardship. Could you please reiterate them?
All right. So this building, the existing building, is not zoning compliant. It doesn't meet the standards that we have in our regulations to having structures meet the FEMA regulations. So that will be clearly addressed as part of the new building going up. Courts have held that if you eliminate or reduce the nonconformity with a zoning variance application, that can be a grounds for the court to uphold the granting of the variance. Secondly, my own personal statement to you that I feel that there's different ways of reading the sections that we filed the application for. As I said, in section 621, it talks about enlarging non-conforming structures. And then we also have section 626, which is right after it, that talks about, and this was the regulation that came in after Sandy and Irene, it doesn't say anything about a difference between non-conforming, legally non-conforming, or non-conforming. So in other words, the regulation that's before you tonight says no non-conforming use of land. That's all it says. It doesn't say it's no legal non-conforming use of land, and that's what we have. We have a use of this building as a multifamily dwelling going back into the 1920s before Milford instituted its zoning regulations. So that, by definition, makes it a legal non-conforming use. 626 talks about, well, you can't expand, you can, I'm trying to get the exact words here. .626 says, and I'm reading it, notwithstanding subsection 621, which is the one that's the subject of tonight's application, any building, structure, or portion thereof containing a legal nonconforming use which has been destroyed. So in other words, in that regulation, it talks about legal nonconforming uses. It doesn't talk about that in our regulation. So I think that there's either something missing, or they meant that you can enlarge a legal nonconforming use. Because under section 626, it says that you can enlarge a legal nonconforming use. So,
Attorney Lynch, but it also says that it must be rebuilt on the same footprint.
that's one of the standards, that's correct. But that's if there's a storm. 626 is in the case of a storm. 621 talks about it under any circumstance. And that's the variance that we're seeking tonight, Carmina. I was just referencing 626, saying in that regulation it talks about legal nonconforming uses, and in 621 it doesn't use the word legal before it talks about a nonconforming use. And we have a legal nonconforming use here. I hope that all makes sense.
You need a big storm.
With regards to your first point of hardship, I understand that the current building, as you say, is, for example, not FEMA compliant.
It's not
And
FEMA
this would
nor
be an
building.
improvement, and this would make it more conforming. However, you do not need a variance to make it more conforming. It could be renovated as it stands, could it not? And then it would be FEMA compliant?
It could, yep. But I'm saying that if you grant this application, that a court could say, well, the Milford Zoning Board of Appeals granted this application and there was a legal hardship that existed to allow them to do that, i.e. that they had a building that wasn't FEMA compliant, it wasn't compliant with the state building code, and now we're removing those non-compliant items to the current building. But to answer your question.
Yeah, but an improvement doesn't mean that the hardship existed. I'm not, you can make this building FEMA compliant without this variance. So I'm not sure how the fact that it is currently not compliant is grounds for hardship.
Okay.
Any other questions? No? Okay.
My client reminds me it's also not fire compliant nor ADA compliant. So there's a lot of things wrong with that building,
Okay.
coupled with the fact that it's an eyesore.
Sure. Okay. Anything else?
That's it.
Any other questions? Okay, is there anyone speaking in favor of this application? Is there anyone opposed? Please come forward one at a time and speak directly into the microphone and say your name and your address for the record, please.
Good evening. My name is Attorney Marjorie Shansky. My office is in New Haven, and I represent Bob and Debbie Fuchs, who own the property at 17 Shell Avenue. And I'm speaking in opposition to this application. I provided a letter to the board dated September 12th, 2022, in which I went through some of the applicable zoning law that talks about how difficult and how sparingly variances are to be granted. I would suggest that this applicant has not established its eligibility for the relief that it is seeking. The primary articulation of the law, in order to grant a variance, two conditions must be met. The variance must be shown not to substantially affect the comprehensive zoning plan, and there has to be a legal hardship. There is nothing more erosive to the comprehensive plan than a non-conforming use that wants to be expanded, inflated, and enlarged. The issue of the same number of units is not the same as an increase in the bedrooms and the increase in the population that will live there, and the almost tripling in size of the structure. These are personal, self-created conditions that have nothing to do with achieving or satisfying the hardship standard. The application, from my review, and I apologize if I missed something that was submitted subsequently, tonight is the first time we're hearing about a purported reduction in nonconformities, a reduction in nonconformities as a proxy for the absence of hardship. But Council has not met that standard either. That standard, as the board member noticed, is not about FEMA compliance. FEMA compliance is driven under the building code. It's driven under the threshold of how much improvement is done to a property in a flood zone. It is not a zoning construct. It's important, but even that section 6.26 is about post-storm repair or reconstruction that doesn't have expansion associated with it. It has reconstruction associated with it. And the building code, fire safety code, ADA, those are not what the cases talk about in terms of reduction nonconformity, because also, as the board noted, on any day, the owner could go develop a set of plans to comply with the current state building code and the fire safety code and introduce accessibility. And if a reasonable accommodation were needed to satisfy that, then either if you have a reasonable accommodation process in Milford or through this board, they could satisfy that need. But there is nothing about this property that gets you from the existing dilapidated structure to the proposed structure by way of this board. Disappointment in the use of one's property is not a hardship. And from a coastal perspective, this is a kind of privatization of the waterfront by the scale of that structure, the proposed structure, that is going to obstruct views from the public way on land and from the waterway looking toward the land. Maximizing the use of one's property is not the subject of a variance. Personal goals. So there's law in my letter, there's a lot of law, which I'm sure this board is acquainted with. The case that comes to mind again and again is the Varillo case that came out of Branford, which was a FEMA compliance on a non-conforming structure that had a non-conforming lot as well. But even the reduction of the movement from a non-FEMA compliant house to a FEMA compliant house, with the excesses of the increase in the volume of the structure did not pass muster, and the appellate court wrote a 90-page opinion about how sparingly variances can be granted. So I commend my letter to your attention. I would say that, that even though the 6.21 exists and is sought to be varied this evening, there has not been a recognized hardship articulated for the grant of a variance, and even 6.2.1 refers or is governed under Section 9 governing this board's jurisdiction, and all of the case law in Connecticut that supports how sparingly variances are to be granted and how the conditions have to emanate from the property itself. There's a non-conforming use on this property which under Petruzzi is entitled to a continued existence. That is absolutely true. At its size and scale, there's nothing about its right to continued existence that permits it to be augmented in the excessive way that's being sought here this evening. So, unless you have some questions for me, I think I have stated the basis on which this board has the authority, and I would say the responsibility, to deny the variance request. I will say about this idea about the representation about moving the garages, I take them at their word on that sort of, but there's an application before this board, and it includes what is on that plan. So I think that is what is before you, and it is not eligible for the relief that is requested. Thank you.
Any questions? Okay, thank you. Is anyone else speaking in opposition? Please come forward.
My name is Nancy Herman. I live at 33 Shell Avenue, which is directly adjacent to the property, in a house that I co-own with my cousin, Ann Blake, who is also here this evening. And I'm a little bit confused now because of the last-minute discussions that we've had. I intended to speak tonight about my very strong objection to the parking garage, which, as designed, would be 10 feet from my bedroom, dining room, living room windows and porch, and would mean that that's what I'm looking out onto, is the back of a parking garage. If in fact, however, the parking garage is eliminated, I don't object to an upgrade or, and a repair and something to happen to the rest of the building. So that's what I wanted to say.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is anyone else opposed?
Madam Chairman, members of the board, my name is Jerry Swirsky. My wife and I reside at 36 Shell Avenue, which is just diagonally across from the proposed 25 Shell Avenue property. In fact, my wife's family had been in residence at this address, 36 Shell Avenue, for more than 100 years. We moved there together in approximately 2004, 2005, and I've become more and more impressed with Shell Avenue itself and what it represents, quite honestly. I don't mean just the people there, but the character of this neighborhood. There's a sense of history here, as there is in many other parts of Milford since I've had an opportunity to get around. And when I initially reviewed the proposed plans, I'm not an architect, but I was immediately taken by the garage situation that seems to be resolved at this point. As far as that goes, as I understand it, that proposed two-story garage with an up and down lift and so forth, if I understand it correctly, and I'm not jumping at it, but if I understand it correctly, that is not going to happen. So I'm relieved about that. Primarily because something like that belongs in a commercial area near the railroad station or in New York City or something comparable. It doesn't belong in a street like Shell Avenue, which has so much charm to it and plays a big part in that part of Milford. So I just would like to just leave the board with my feelings that I don't think this necessarily will contribute to the existing character and ongoing character of a community that's been there for a long, long time. I think to get into more and more commercialization, which is what this represents, is unfortunate at the least. And so I leave you with that thought and those thoughts, and thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else speaking in opposition? Sure.
Hi, I'm Robert Fuchs, 17 Shell, next to 35 Shell, and I'll basically echo what my attorney had to say. That's basically what I was going to say. We did speak a little bit about that parking garage, which is just garish and out of control in our neighborhood. We can't have lifts and lights on all night and hydraulics. I mean, this is Shell Avenue. It's not Collins Avenue. It's not Madison Avenue. It's Shell Avenue. I think that bit of the part of that puzzle may be resolved. At least we had some tentative discussions about that. My only concern, that was one of them, because that would have affected a lot of people. It has to be lit at night. Let's face it, it's a garage. So people coming in at 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, up goes the lift, down goes the lift. You have a nice summer evening, now you're hearing, I don't care how quiet they are, they're noisy. Other things that concerned me were the amount of air conditioning units that would have to be placed around the building. If you have 9 large condominiums, many of them could be 2 zones. We have 2 zones in our house, so therefore we have 2 units on the side of our house. So if you have 9 units and they're not split up, you have 9 compressors going all summer long, which it could happen, and also maybe an extra 3 or 4 if the units were split up where you have heating down, cooling down. It's an awful building. It's an elephant in the room. At one time, it was the Seabreeze Hotel. It was fabulous, I'm sure, pre-zoning. The last owner was horrendous. He should have been fined and put in jail because he did 0 to that place. It's a rat trap. I spoke with Margaret about that. It's an awful, awful place. My only concern would be to shrink it a little bit and not to make it 2 more wings with that large building, which would mean less units, which would mean probably less profit. I get it. I just think if you look at the size of that building on our street, which is very narrow, very short, it already dwarfs the homes that are there. I just think a smaller version, if that's possible, would satisfy, and the parking garage has to go. That's a gimme, in my opinion. I think we could all come to some kind of compromise. Again, it still has to go through other zoning issues. It may get shot down in another board. But our concern is that it's just big, and it would dwarf our neighborhood. And if Ms. Stryker could make it a little smaller, I think that would be wonderful. And parking garage goes, and I think we could all live happily ever after. But there's no doubt that I've been next to it for 22 years, and I've been in Milford for 62, started in Bayview in 1960 with on Bayshore Drive on Bayview Beach when my parents paid the whopping sum of $13,000 for the cottage on Bayview Beach, which is a long time ago. So I've seen a lot going on in Milford over the years, but we love Shell Avenue. That building's been a thorn in our side for 22 years. There's no doubt that we've had transients in and out, and frankly, there was one actually really bad one. But I think Ms. Stryker could do a great job, whatever she does in our neighborhood, including her house, the houses that she's done, the condos that she's done. It's been a beautiful job, great job, top-notch all the way. But I think if we could just maybe shrink it a little bit, maybe the sides come down a little, get rid of the parking garage, we could all work together and it would be harmonious for everybody. But again, there's other battles to fight along with this that she would have to go through to see if it fits. But I will echo what my attorney said as far as, is it non-conforming? Can you really extend a non-conforming use without showing a hardship? I really didn't see any hardship in everything that I read. So that's up to you to figure out. Thank you.
Sir, a question?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Sir, I have a question for you. I just want your personal opinion. What would you rather see there? This building remodeled or 4 building lots and 4 houses built?
Well, would I rather see this being remodeled or 4 houses being built?
Yes.
I don't know. I don't know. This houses certainly wouldn't be as tall as that building. That's for sure.
And they could be 35 to the midspan.
Yeah, but that's a lot bigger than 35 feet. We're next to it, and I'm doing this. So that's not 35 feet. Would I be opposed to 4 houses? I really don't know. I'd have to see what they would look like. And Ms. Stryker certainly has the ability to knock that down and do whatever she wants. Now it's conforming. I would love to see that building rehabbed. I just don't know about the size seems garish. It just seems like it's 2 elephants in the room or 3 elephants in the room. But I don't know. That's a good question about the houses. I'm sure they'd be beautiful. Sure, they'd be well-maintained and they would go with the neighborhood, which this building doesn't. But if it was fixed up with, I know Mr. Oliver's done great work in town, and as I said, Ms. Stryker has done fabulous. Everything she does is good. This just might be a little big, that's all I'm saying. Anything else?
Any other questions?
Okay.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks.
Is anyone else opposed?
My name is Ann Greenstone Blake, and I reside at 5 River Edge in Milford. I am the co-owner of 33 Shell, which is directly adjacent to 25 Shell. I am looking forward to a positive change in our neighborhood, but I am standing opposed to you granting a variance for the existing plans that have been submitted. I am looking forward to working with our new neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Kenna Hagan. I live at 40 Shell Avenue. I just, to put a finer point on the discussion tonight, and I think some others have stated it, that the facts and details for the application aren't before you tonight. And so I would urge the board to require the applicant to file a revised application that has the details that are making the adjustments related to the garage and possibly better conformance to size. There was some urgency tonight from applicant's attorney, the high-pressure sales pitch that the decision must come tonight for this alternative plan to be moved forward. And I just urge this board to consider the plan before you does not reflect that, and a request for a revised plan should be made so that you can make a decision based on the actual plan that will be proposed. Or in the alternative, you could do a conditional approval subject to revised plans to be filed. But the first alternative would be preferred. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, please come forward.
Madam Chairman, thank you so much for allowing me to speak. I'm Nancy Westcott Pocock. I live at 60 Shell Avenue, down the street a little bit. It has been my pleasure to live on Shell Avenue since 2001. and I look forward to working with our new neighbors. I support Kenna's position and Jerry's position very strongly. While if you judge the current proposal before you, I would ask you not to approve it in its current condition until they have revised their drawings so that we know exactly what we're going to get in the neighborhood, rather than promises, because promises can be changed through negotiation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Dan Welby. I live on 28 Shell Ave, which is directly across the street from the proposed structure. My wife and I moved on to Shell Avenue about 20 years ago. We fell in love with the neighborhood just many times walking and jogging. We were overwhelmed by its charm, peaceful feeling, and friendly people who lived there. So when our opportunity came, we took advantage of it, and we purchased this house at 28 Shell Ave. We have invested heavily recently into remodeling our house to take advantage of what the street has to offer. I did, however, understood that someday the reef apartments might get sold, and we'd have a couple new homes and neighbors to welcome to our street. But after seeing the development plans for 25 Shell Ave, we were really taken back by its massive size. I looked long and hard to try to figure out how they were planning to squeeze all that onto that size lot. How many more cars also were going to be driving in and out of our street? My estimation could be as many as 20. How will that affect the kids' safety, playing in the street? I have 3 daughters. How about all the bikers and the joggers and the road races that go down our street traditionally? How about all the lighting in the parking lots, constant humming of air conditioning and hydraulic car lifts, which now seems to be maybe removed from the option? Not to mention, there's going to be the equivalent of a Disney cruise ship parked at port across the street 24/7, completely degrading several homes' visual quality, wiping out our ability to see or hear the water. These plans are excessive and drastically alter the way of life in Shell Ave for the worse. This street is not designed to handle such massive upgrade and will affect it for generations to come. I do, however, support upgrading and modernizing reef apartments, as the place is in shambles and, quite frankly, a dump. I do believe this can be done without drastically increasing the size and taking away the historical charm and the feel that makes Shell Ave so special. I actually never thought so soon after investing so much into our home and planning to retire in Shell Ave that we'd be soon talking about our options to find another Shell Ave somewhere else if this project is approved. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Is anyone else opposed? No? Sure.
Good evening. My name is Dan Howard. I reside at 18 Shell Avenue, which is just kind of directly across from 25 Shell. My biggest opposition to this was the garage. It's a very residential neighborhood. It's been very quiet. I've been living there 49 years. I think I'm the second oldest person on the block. The only person that's there longer than me would be Mary Ann Griffin. But I think all the people on Shell Avenue can work with Margaret to come up with a plan that will keep everybody happy. And I also agree that we should put this off until a final vote at some other date. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, please.
Hi, my name's Patricia Campanelli. I'm at 49 Shell. This house was purchased by my grandparents in 1968. It's a family, second home. We call it our forever home. I'm the 3rd generation that's been part of this house, and now we have a 4th generation, and soon to have a 5th generation. So Shell Avenue, for my family and extended family, is like our second home. It's really close to our heart. We had a big celebration when the house was fit. We had it for 50 years. So I've talked to my mother and my aunt who own the home, and my 2 sisters and their children, because it's going to be in our family for generations, about this proposal. And I can speak for everybody, but for myself, we're all completely against the garage for the reasons that everyone here, then the neighbors have spoke about the traffic and the noise. I do think the current property is an eyesore compared to so many of the beautiful homes and renovations that have happened. And putting in a new or existing or renovated property would be great, but to just concur with many of the other neighbors, it's just too large. I think if there's a way that it can be, many of us in my family have said, well, can we make it 6 units or 7 units, but 9, maybe because it's so large. So perhaps a changing of the plan and definitely eliminating the parking garage would, I know, make my family happy. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else speaking in opposition? No? Okay. Any questions? And I do have a question for you too, Attorney Lynch, please. Someone mentioned the number of bedrooms. Do you know how many bedrooms there are currently and how many there will be in the proposed structure?
How many bedrooms currently and how long?
I don't have.
It should be on the floor plans.
Actually, as it was issued, the certificate of occupancy, excuse me, this is Margaret Stryker again. The certificate of occupancy, as it was originally issued, was for 13 units, and over the past 50 years, they reduced it to 9. So this was originally built with at least 13 bedrooms in it, because it was a 13-unit issuance when they first did that in the 50s. And as many people have spent a lot of time this evening telling us how long they've all lived on the block, I'd also like to say that my children are now 7th generation to Milford, and we live 200 feet up the street. So this is very much in our family as well. My father just passed away. He lived next door to me. I live on Trumbull. My sister lives down the block on Trumbull. My mother's still on Trumbull. My entire family has lived on this street, up and down the street, for over 100 years. So to say that I don't care about this building or what it looks like or turns into is extraordinarily disingenuous. Also, for the record, I never wanted that garage. That was a concession to accommodate the increased number of parking spots that the city of Milford felt we had to have to meet the code. So that's why it's there. And it wasn't intended to be up and down all night long. It was that each unit, 9 units, would each have their own. And so if they have a second car, they would simply put it in, lift it up, and forget about it for the summer until they took it out for their Sunday drive. This was not a commercial garage. But putting that aside, what I have said is I can eliminate that, and then I will have to go before the city of Milford and once again put forth to them that there shouldn't be as much parking as they are requiring. The reason why that is there is to accommodate 22 parking spaces for 9 units, a point which I wholly disagree with. Now, in terms of the scale of the building, and I do support it, and on this list of 21 names who do support it, there's one who spoke tonight who said he supported it, then he said he's against it, and then in the hallway he said he supported it again entirely if the garage came out, and that's fine. That's what, concession is about. We can't and shouldn't go back and redo these plans for a garage. I'm saying on the record, I will take it out and I'll just have to figure it out with the parking spots. The architect unfortunately passed away. We have filed his plans as he passed, and the issue before you tonight is the building, not the ancillary building. I will take the ancillary building out. I am a woman of my word, and if I say it, I'll do it. I'll just figure it out and do it. But we don't have to come back, and you can issue a conditional one, by the way. Issue me a conditional approval that says, yes, you can do this without the garage, and I'll live by it. I have no interest in tricking. And I'm going to be living with these people next door for the next 100 years because I'm not going anywhere either. So this is very much an effort to get something moving forward. But within the confines of this existing proposed building, it is not increasing in height. It is not increasing in unit count, and it is in fact meeting the code. And we are standing here once again before you tonight because the building department, is that the right word? Building department has said they didn't want to adjudicate the issue without us coming before you. Thank you, the zoning office. Not that we weren't meeting the code, and yes, we are building this up to ADA compliance, and yes, we are building this up to fire safety code, and frankly, we cannot do that and still maintain the number of bedrooms we already have and still bring it up to the codes, because this was built as a transient hotel, which again started off being more than 13 units, then they approved it with 13 units, and then they moved it down at some point, you know, the Chernox just combined or whatever they did over there. So now it is 9. And it has been 9 for a while, and we're proposing to keep it as 9.
Sarah, to answer your question, the new building has 20 bedrooms.
And the existing? The existing has 13 bedrooms. Okay. Ms. Hirsch?
I do have a question for you, Attorney Lynch, or your client. Your client referenced that only a certain number of parking spaces are currently permissible on that lot, correct?
No. Right now, if we legalize the 9 units to code, according to the code, I believe it's efficiencies in 1-bedrooms have to have 2 spots, and then 2 and 3 units have to have 3 spots. And somehow this blended to the 22 spots, because I think there then had to be a separate extra 2 spots for guest parking. It's too much parking. It shouldn't need to have that much parking, but it was put on the plans to meet the regulation.
Sure. So what are the, based on the building structure that's currently there, what are the maximum permissible spots?
There is no maximum permissible.
Well, there had to be
Minimum
for-
required.
The minimum required is not being met either which way. It's just gravel. There's no even lines to mark parking. It's just people throw cars down.
The building was built 100 years ago, so there were no zoning regulations, no quantitative number of parking spaces. So right now, there's just a gravel parking area, and people park wherever they can park.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Nope.
I just wanted to conclude, again, to buttress the fact that irrespective of Attorney Shansky's comments, there's a move afoot in the Connecticut Bar Association, the land use section, to address some of the items that were set forth in the Verrilli ruling that she mentioned. That was a case in Branford a couple of years ago that basically said there's no such thing as a variance. So people in the legislature are starting to hear comments from lawyers, land use lawyers, to the effect that what you folks do every month, okay? Every month you listen to applications, and probably 99% of the time, I'll be honest, there isn't a strict legal hardship that meets the standard of the Verrilli case. But what you do, and what cases have recognized, is when you hear an application, you find that it's reasonable, that it conforms with the neighborhood, albeit comments from neighborhood, that is always a negative. I know you're sensitive to comments to people in the neighborhood. But the bottom line is this board has traditionally acted to find reason, to find compromise. How many times have we come in and denials have been issued without prejudice to encourage coming back to modify plans? That's what we had the initial discussion in the hallway before we even started this presentation to you tonight. And I'll be perfectly honest with you. One of the neighbors who's here with Attorney Shansky said, all that I'm concerned about, my only problem is the garage. And we said, if we eliminate the garage, are you good with this? And the answer was yes. All right. So the subsequent comments came from a lot of the neighbors, Ms. Herman, some of the others, again, about the garage. We are willing to address the garage. We can't just erase it off the screen right now, but we can tell you that we will eliminate it. And the next step in the administrative approval process is to go to the Planning and Zoning Board. And if this application is granted with a condition that the garage be removed from the plans, it then becomes something that runs with the land, and it has to be adhered to by the Planning and Zoning Board. when we go before them with a CAM application. So I don't want to belabor that. It's a procedural thing, but nobody's going to get hoodwinked here. My client agreed to take a 9-bay double-lift garage building off the site, provide for parking, in other means on the site, and that's what we submitted to you. And we think that it's it's a beautiful building, it's reasonable, and I'd ask that you approve this application with the condition that the garage be removed. Thank you.
Mr. Soto.
Attorney Lynch, if you eliminate the garage, will you have enough parking spaces? Because your client said she had to add the garage with the double lift to get the parking spaces.
We'll have to find it. We'll have to find it, or there'll have to be a waiver or come back to you with a variance. And maybe at that point, you'd have to shrink the building a little bit. I don't know.
You know, we're always for compromise and keep the neighbors happy and everything. Is your client willing to downsize the building at all?
No. No, she felt that, and again, we met with Ray Oliver and designed a building that kept the unit count the way it was. At the time, with all due respect to Stephen, who's sitting here, at the time, based upon the Maddox Avenue case, the office policy was that you can enlarge a structure that's devoted to a non-conforming use as long as you don't increase the units. That's exactly what happened on the Maddox case, and it was upheld by the court that they had the right to make that as a policy. And I understand now they want to change the policy. Okay, I get it. Right. It's not in the regulations. They want to change the policy.
But you're going from what, 7,500 to what was that, 13,000?
7,500 to 12,500.
7,500 to 12,500.
Way undersized for the lot coverage and the building coverage. What can go on this parcel? And there's a 1920s case, and I can't remember the name of it, but there was an old judge that said there's no God-given right to a water view. Okay? So what we're trying to do is accommodate that concern of people maintaining a water view, and that's the compromise that my client offered.
Okay. Any other questions? Is anyone opposed to closing the hearing?
Let me ask you something. Maddox Avenue, didn't that come before us 2 or 3 times? Didn't we turn it down?
Stephen, do you have the history on that?
How did that go, Stephen, Maddox Avenue? That came before us a few times, right?
Maddox came before you twice for variances. The final set of plans didn't require variance.
So they came before us twice and we denied it, and
They
then...
came before you twice for dimensional variances to be inside of a setback.
Right. But it was denied twice by us, right?
Yes.
And then they changed the plans and didn't need a variance, correct?
Then they redesigned the project so that...
And then it went to court, and the court upheld it, right?
Don't want to get too far into the weeds of something that's not germane to this case.
Can I supplement Stephen's comment? Was that one of the issues in the case was that the Office of Permitting and Land Use made a determination that taking down 2 cottages and then building a larger structure that was a 2-family house was not an enlargement under 621. And one of the issues in the case that was raised by the attorney who filed the appeal in court was that was an error on their part. The court upheld Stevens' issuance of the permit and upheld the fact that they made a determination that that was not an expansion or an enlargement of a non-conforming use. And I contended in my arguments with the zoning office that we had the same situation here. I did not win that argument, and that's why we're here.
So the determination was made that that was not an enlargement, and as Stephen reminded us, no variance was needed ultimately in the final proposal. However, you are here tonight for a variance.
That's what I'm saying.
So the zoning office has decided that you need a variance in order.
The office changed their policy, right? But back to Maddox, same situation.
So that's why you're doing unit count, correct?
That's why we designed a building with 9 units, because the existing building has 9
Had 9,
units.
and now you're
based
going back to
upon
9.
Based upon what happened in that case,
And Maddox,
we
they-
sat with Ray Oliver and said,
I think if I remember right, Maddox,
make a bigger building, but keep it at 9 units.
and didn't Maddox Avenue like quadruple the square footage?
Yes, it was 2 little tiny cottages, and then Sonny built a huge 3,800 square foot
To
two-family
be honest,
house.
I never thought the court would upheld that.
Well, they did. They said that he had the right to do it. He had the right, or Joe Griffith, whoever made the determination, that was not an enlargement of a structure devoted to a non-conforming use. And that's what we have here, a enlargement of a structure that is devoted to a legal non-conforming use.
I think, however, though, if the zoning office has determined that this application needs a variance, then it is our job to decide whether or not that variance is warranted, not whether or not the zoning office is correct in determining that one is required.
I agree with you 100%, and that's why we're here. I'm just saying, I might felt that we didn't have to be here, but I lost out on that argument.
All right. Is anyone opposed to closing the hearing? Or you would like to close the hearing? Okay. All right. Any other questions? All right. This hearing is closed.
It's a tough one with this parking garage and the mechanical lifts out of the picture. You're going to modify this lot and add spaces all the way along the back, and add 9 spaces around is going to change the footprint of this house. We have a calculation of parking spaces versus square footage of a property that needs to be maintained.
And
If
to
we
your
wipe
point,
out this mechanical lift and add spaces around the back, we have a percentage calculation that
Do you
comes
have a
into play.
question? Do you have a question for me?
Yes, what is that percentage?
Of
Parking spaces versus
9
footprint?
units require 2 spaces per unit, so they need a minimum of 18 parking spaces. How they have already made it very clear on the record that the parking garage will be removed. It's up to them to figure out where to put those parking spaces.
and to your point, Chris, and that was sort of the crux of my questioning, if the building is reduced in size and potentially reduced in units, finding those parking spaces will be easier.
Big time, right. Ray Oliver's not coming back, but this is saying they got to draw this up again, is what I'm feeling. They got to come back.
Well, I don't think that the issue is actually the parking garage. The issue is the enlargement of the structure. That's why we're here. There's one regulation that they are requesting a variance on. The argument whether or not that is actually required, I think, is irrelevant because the zoning office has decided that it is required. So we are now responsible for determining whether or not there is hardship enough to grant the variance. It is a 9-unit building. It can continue, it does not need to increase inside to continue to be a 9-unit building. I think there are many ways to renovate it. I'm in favor of a renovation. I live in the neighborhood as well, and I think it's an eyesore too. However, I don't see why a building this size is required to maintain 9 units or to bring it up to code or to make it compliant or more compliant. I don't see a hardship, and I'm open to other interpretations.
Well, I feel there's room to downsize the building. I know they don't want to hear that, and they're going to have to get another architect, but, you know, we heard the neighbors, and the neighbors think it's all oversized. They have agreed to remove the parking garage, so, I mean, that's a plus. But I do think going from 7,500 to 12,500 is a lot. And, you know, so I'm having trouble with this.
Any other thoughts? This also isn't something that we need to vote on tonight. If if we would like to continue to consider all the information received here tonight and all the testimony from the constituents. So that is an option as well.
I support that option.
I mean, if they were having trouble getting the 22 spots that they needed and they had to go to the two-level parking garage, with the building that size, I can't see how they're even going to come close to that.
Yeah, I mean, parking alone might necessitate a downsize, but
Yeah.
we can't guarantee that or confirm that tonight.
Right.
So are we in favor of pushing the vote? I believe so, yeah.
Pushing it to come back with new drawings, or pushing it?
No, the hearing is closed. No new information can be introduced. It is an opportunity for us to take the month to consider everything we've heard here tonight and make a final vote next month.
Well, Attorney Lynch seemed like time is of the essence, so maybe we should just vote on it. That way they can get going on the new plans, or, you know, then we're not holding them up for another month, because I do think they need to do some revisions here to get the neighbors on board with this. You know?
Well, I'm hearing some that want to vote, some that don't. We do need a motion, and then we can determine which way it's going to go.
Motion to approve.
May I? Is the public hearing closed?
Yes,
'Cause
the hearing is closed.
I didn't know if you wanted to hear.
Madam Chair, the
our
hearing is
offer to-
closed.
The hearing is
Yep,
closed.
okay.
There is a motion on the floor. We need a second. There is a motion on the floor. Mr. Wolf made a motion to approve, so we need a second.
I'll second it.
Okay, Mr. Wolf,
I'm against the motion.
Mr. Soto,
Against the motion.
Ms. Hirsch,
Against.
Mr. Montano,
Against.
and I'm against the motion.
Next agenda item, 9 Little Pond Road, MVP 39/618/6A, R-10, Sachin Anand. Please forgive me if I haven't pronounced your name properly. Owner, Very 3 Point. Can we have quiet in the room, please, as you exit the hearing?
This meeting is still in progress, so please keep your voices down as you leave.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Vary 3.1.4.1 easterly rear yard setback to 17.4, where 25 feet are required to construct a structure over basement access stairs.
Go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Sachin Anand. I reside at 17 Maddox Avenue. I was not in the meeting today, but before. So I'm just here to just continue what Attorney Crusaden left from last month, and he was out of town, so he told me to cover for him or just be here to just continue the same thing. He provided everyone with a brief summary of what was done last time versus what we are proposing, and so I don't have much to add to what he said last time and what he said in front of the board in the form of memo. So if anyone have any more questions other than just the memo, I'll be able to answer to my best ability. Otherwise, that's what I'm presenting.
Madam Chair, just to help the applicant summarize, last month you approved the basement steps going from the ground into the basement. The application before you this month is to build the enclosure over the steps, sort of like a vertical Bilco, only it's attached to the house. It's part of the building.
Great, wonderful. And if I remember correctly, we approved the stairs and we put the project back to your office to determine if another variance was needed for the structure, which is why we're here tonight.
That's correct.
Okay, fantastic. Is there anyone speaking in favor of this application? Anyone opposed? Any questions from the board? Yes.
This enclosure will protect the basement from severe rain, snow, ice.
Yes, sir.
in the event that the shroud is not put on, potential flooding?
Yes, if there's no structure above the stairs, the rainwater and the snow will directly enter the basement and can do flooding.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, this hearing is closed. All right, so as we determined, we did approve the stairs last month. We're here now to approve or not the structure surrounding the stairs. Again, we did approve the stairs, so I have no problem with this. It's kind of a tack
I
on
make a
from
motion to
last month.
approve.
Second.
Great, Mr. Wolf,
I'm for the motion.
Mr. Soto,
With the motion.
Ms. Hirsch,
With the motion.
Mr. Montano,
With the motion.
I'm with the motion.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Have a good night.
Good night.
Item number 5, 5 Beach Avenue, MBP 82/784/6, R-12.5, Kevin Kersadian Esquire, for Charles Smith and Karen Smith owners, vary 3.1.4.1 front yard setback to 27.5 feet, where 30 is required, with a 3-foot front yard setback existing to attach garage to house.
Good evening, I'm Michael Lobuyo, the architect, and I'm here to just say that we would like to attach a mudroom to the back of this garage. It's a very small area, a little sliver of a triangle, and we think it's reasonable to do that.
Sir, could you walk us through the project?
Do you have the floor plans and elevations there?
Perhaps if you can describe the front yard setback that you're asking for to construct the new house?
Yes, it's a 30-foot front setback required. And if you can zoom in on the sliver of the proposed addition there, you could see the diagonal line, which is the 30-foot setback, exactly. Yeah, if you can blow that up, please. Yeah, it's just that very small triangle that we'd like to fill in with a one-story mudroom connector.
Stephen, where's the setback line?
It's on that...
The front?
Yeah, it's a diagonal. It's parallel with the street, and it just cuts across the front corner of the garage. And you can see the side yard setback on the left there.
This dashed line is the setback.
Yeah, follow that straight through. So it's just a small sliver.
Right. So the garage is existing. It'll be attached with this mudroom, but the bulk of the new home will be well beyond the 30-foot setback.
Correct.
Okay. Any other
I'd
questions?
just like to add that the garage is existing non-conforming.
Yes.
So they have not abandoned that.
Right. Mr. Wolf, did you have a question?
The existing garage, any modifications or improvements or expansion to that going up?
We are keeping the same footprint. We are changing the slope of the roof. We are going, it's currently a 7-pitch. I don't know if you saw photographs of it, but it's not symmetrical. We plan on keeping the same pitch, but making it symmetrical. At one time, it looked like it was a one-car garage, and then they added a shed roof onto one side of it. So we'd like to just square that up, make it nice and symmetrical, and have it more appealing.
To fit 2 cars?
Yes.
Anything above it? Bedroom?
It'll be
Plumbing?
storage above, and there'll be a pull-down stair within the garage that accesses it.
Thank you.
Stephen, a question. If this ever goes up a second story, that garage, since now it's part of the primary structure, if it's attached, would that need to come back for another variance for increase?
No, because it's attached to the house. It's part of the house now.
Correct, but if this goes from a single story to a second story, would that second story need another variance or no?
No. It's subject to the height
Existing.
limitation of 35 feet once you connect it to the house.
So it's a
all one
single-story
structure.
garage right now, but it could, if granted, go up to 35 feet, 3 feet from the road, or from the property line.
Scale-wise, we would just never do that. It would be so
No, but
tall.
the option exists in the future, which is
Well,
something to keep in
We
mind.
could condition it to stay at 1 story, couldn't we?
We could. Yep. Okay. Is anyone speaking in favor of this application? Anyone opposed? Any other questions? No? All right, then this hearing is closed. I'm not opposed to this because the garage is existing and you're entitled to retain what they have. The house itself will respect the setbacks. I think it's kind of probably best case scenario given what's existing and what will be built. My concern, however, would be a second story in the future. If it stays a garage, that's fantastic, but if it goes up, now we've got, a massive wall right on the street.
I say we condition it with a motion that the garage remains 1 story.
Any elevations here?
Where the cursor is, this is the garage, the front of the house, so this is the garage here, it's shown.
The way that window is on the 2nd floor, they really couldn't go up.
Yeah, it's a pull
You
down.
really can't go up to the 2nd story because you'd be,
I'm good.
I mean,
we'll condition
things
it
can happen
anyway.
any day.
yeah.
Okay, Mr. Soto, would you please repeat your motion?
I make a motion to approve and that the condition on the garage remains single story.
Second.
Okay, great. Mr. Wolf,
I'm for the motion.
Mr. Soto,
With the motion.
Ms. Hirsch,
With the motion.
Mr. Montano,
With the motion.
I'm with the motion. Thank you.
Next agenda item is number 6, 6 Clinton Street, MBP 71/760/7, R-7.5, Rick Mangione, owner, vary 3.1.4.1 rear yard setback to 13.4, where 20 feet required to add a bay to existing attached garage.
All set?
Yes.
How are you? I'm Rick Mangione. Me and my wife bought this house. We sold our house in July, moving to Milford. And it's a corner lot, and there's 2 fronts to the house. So we use Clinton Street as the front. The garage is okay to expand it, but it makes the whole back of the house non-conforming. So we'll use the Hawley as the front, makes the back of the house fine, but the garage, I need a variance. The existing garage that was there, it's a concrete deck. We're not building up. We're not increasing the size of the house, just the garage. Concrete deck was all held up with 2x6s. It was collapsing. So the existing 1-car garage, I had to take it down. And to add 10 feet to build a new garage with just a deck on it, it's not that much of a cost. So that's why we're hoping to get the additional garage. There's no objections to the neighbors. I sent out all the required mailing. And I'd rather have grass next to the existing new garage versus a detached garage, which I could build 4 feet away from my neighbor. So I'd rather have open space.
Mhm. Any questions? Okay, is there anyone speaking in favor of this application? Anyone opposed? Any other questions? Okay, this hearing is closed. Thoughts?
Pretty basic, I don't have a problem with it.
Anyone else? Okay, go ahead.
I make a motion to approve.
Seconded.
Mr. Wolf,
I'm with the motion.
Mr. Soto,
With the motion.
Ms. Hirsch,
With the motion.
Mr. Montano.
With the motion.
I'm with the motion.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And last but certainly not least, number 7. Thank you for your patience, ladies and gentlemen. 74 Essex Drive, MBP 92/7048A. Kevin Fallon and Aaron Fallon, owners, vary 3.1.4.1 side yard setback to 6.5, where 10 feet required to construct a 2-story garage addition with in-law behind on first floor and common living space above.
Thank you, everybody, for taking the time to hear what we have to say. We
Ms.
are...
Ms. Fallon, please,
Yes.
if you could just pull the microphone.
New at this. We are requesting to build an in-law apartment or dwelling, if you will, and still be able to maintain the structure of the houses in our neighborhood, especially our 2 next-door neighbors, as they have detached garage. So our house currently is a ranch, and so by adding this structure, it won't deviate that much from our 2 neighbors. We also wanted to put it in the least impactful location due to the land that we have available for building. If we were to build on the opposite side of our house, we may not be able to comply with the in-law requirements of not having a front entrance separate from the existing entrance, given the amount of land on the side. And so we decided to keep with the requirements of adding on to the location where the driveway already exists. And so the 2-car garage would be facing the street. Now it's underneath our house, and we kind of turn in. And then the in-law dwelling will be beyond that. And so by moving it back, we were able to avoid requesting or asking for 2 variants, one for the front and then one for the side. We spoke with our neighbors. They're in support of the construction, and Ms. Delden on the side, and Ralph, how do you pronounce his last name? Have also supported us in writing, if you're willing to take a look at that, or if it's something that you could do. And I think that's about it. Just trying to look over all my notes. Yes.
The house currently has a 2-car garage.
Yes.
Yes, so could this addition be just an in-law attached without needing the variance and not have, I understand, you need 24 feet for a 2-car garage, which would dictate the width of the in-law apartment in the back, and that's where your variance is. But an in-law unit wouldn't need to be 24 feet wide if it was just the in-law unit attached to the house maintaining the current garage.
The in-law would, the variance is on the side and not the back. If we were to move it back beyond the garage, we would need to request a variance for the side and for the back of our lot.
Okay.
So,
well, how big is the in-law?
The in-law is about 530 square feet. So at the drawing, you can see the 2-bay garage. The in-law is somewhat attached to it so that we could comply with the back of our property and not require a variance for the back.
Does the current 2-car garage take up the entire depth of the house? I mean, I'm seeing only a small overlap in the in-law unit and the existing house. Oh, is that, I'm sorry, can you zoom in? I really can't see.
If I can explain this.
Yes.
The existing 2-car garage is where the cursor is now, and that reason it's going to be converted to storage. And off to the right is the new garage with the in-law suite behind it.
Mm-hmm.
So you couldn't have access to the second
connecting to the main house through this door. But the issue before the board isn't the in-law apartment per se, it's the location of the new structure and its relation to the lot line.
No, I understand that. I guess that my thought is this in-law suite, I'm looking at, I see the rear setback marked here. This in-law suite without a new garage could go further back without interfering with the rear setback and be attached at the corner of the house some way. And the existing two-car garage could be maintained as a garage with the in-law. I mean, the side yard setback is necessitated by the width of a two-car garage. But if this is for the in-law apartment that is only 20 feet instead of 24 feet wide, there would be no setbacks variance required.
There's also drainage in the back between our property and the one behind. So that was one of the other things that we had to comply with as well. There's a drain that is in between our property and the one behind it. And so that was one of the issues that we were working with as well.
Mm-hmm. Bill, do you have any thoughts on this? Any other questions? Okay. Is anyone speaking in favor of this application? Anyone opposed?
Madam Chair, there was a letter of opposition submitted today.
Okay. One letter of opposition. Okay. Any questions from the board? Can you zoom in on that or read it?
All right, it says, it's from Anna Petrove, and it reads, my name is Anna Petrove, and I live at 3 Shamrock Road. I am concerned how the addition at 74 Essex Drive will affect flooding that I'm experiencing every time we get over 3 inches of rain. My home is not located in a flood zone. However, its elevation is lower than either of my neighbors, and my family room and garage were built below street level. When it rains, water has nowhere to go. I would have liked to have storm drain built, but apparently my street does not have storm pipes going through. As far as I can tell, the site for the proposed addition and garage is at least a foot below street level. I am concerned that floodings I am periodically experiencing will worsen if they raise elevation for the new addition and garage. Hopefully you will consider my drainage issues before you approve the variance to the zoning regulations. Thankfully, Anna Petrovi.
Thank you. Yes.
The property, we are looking to regrade the front of it where she's speaking above with the regard. We are looking to regrade the property, and we are removing a drain that we currently have in our driveway. But the sewer she's speaking about is on the opposite side of our house, so it really has opposite side and has no direct correlation to our system. So where she's speaking about how the water flows, it's completely on the opposite side. So it doesn't, that argument doesn't make sense.
And you mentioned a drain or drainage issue in the backyard precluding the addition from moving further back, but where is that in relation to the proposed plan?
The drain in between our two houses? Is that the one you're speaking of?
I asked why you couldn't push the in-law unit back more, and you had mentioned some drain issue in the backyard, and I'm wondering where that is in relation.
It is, if you scroll down a little bit.
Where are we going?
Scroll down. Right there, that triangle. And then you can see the bushes in between.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
The drain is the triangle all the way up at the right-hand corner. But we also wanted to make sure that the structure didn't deviate from the others in the neighborhood next door, the ones directly next door to us. So if we were to move it back, it would look dissimilar to the others. And quite honestly, kind of a little bit odd to have a two-story house and then garage that you turn into and then an in-law separated from the house. There might not potentially be an opportunity to have a direct door to our house if we did that. We would have to remove one of our bays of our garage as well.
Okay. All right, any other questions?
Where is the
So I believe on the drawing, it is on the other side. That goes into our house and then right there, yes.
Is the in-law apartment going to be one-story or two-story?
One story,
And it's a walk-in? I'm sorry.
yes. Yes.
What will be on the second story of the garage?
I'm sorry, what was that?
You're looking to build a two-story garage, correct?
So above the structure to, again, maintain the integrity of the other houses in the neighborhood, we were going to build on top of that, one bedroom for Kevin and I.
So another bedroom?
So it would maintain the 2 stories like everybody else in the neighborhood.
To be entered through the second floor of the existing house?
Yes.
Okay.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Okay, this hearing is closed. Bill, do you think there's any way to modify this to not require a setback variance?
Four-foot in width of the garage?
Yeah, I mean, they already have a 2-car garage, and the 2-car garage portion of this proposed addition is what's necessitating the variance request, because you gotta have 24 feet.
Well, they're using 2 9-by-7 doors, and then they got about 2 foot in between. You could go to a single 18-foot door and probably cut that garage down by at least 2 or 4 feet in width. Is that what you're looking at?
Yeah.
You're going all the way down.
Which the back of it's the in-law, right?
Right, right.
Yeah, so you'd be cutting the in-law down by 4 feet also.
Right.
But then you'd be picking up, well, what's the zone, what's the variance on that? I mean, what's the setback on that side, 10 feet?
10,
So they really only need to pick up 3.5 feet.
right.
Or you could compromise at 22 feet, and they would have 8.5 feet instead of 6.5 feet.
Better. I'm sorry, the original alternative you proposed would bring it to what?
Well, if you cut the garage down to 20 feet, you would have 10.5 feet there, so you'd be, you know, if you wanted to no variance, they could build it at 20 feet 6 inches.
And that's reasonable for a 2-car garage?
No, it's kind of tight.
Okay, so is there?
22 is the
22.
minimum on a width, if you put an 18-foot single door.
Okay. Well, that seems like a nice compromise.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
Yeah, you're not going to get two 9-foot doors on a 20-foot garage, you know what I mean? You got to go
Right.
to a single door.
Right.
So 22 feet is a lot better.
Which would bring us to 8.5,
I mean, I built
where 10
in
required.
20 feet with a single 18 door, but it's, you know, it's a little tight inside. Swinging the doors open and stuff.
Okay, but 22 would work, which would bring us to 8.5 where 10 required. It's something. What do you guys think?
Repeat that again, Madam Chair? With the 24?
If you do a 24-foot wide garage, which they're proposing, would require the side yard setback of 6.5 feet where 10 required. To do a 22-foot wide garage, they would need a setback of 8.5 where 10 required. So you're gaining 2 feet, or we're saving 2 feet in the setback. So now it's a variance of 1.5 feet instead of 3.5 feet.
But you're also shrinking the in-laws apartment. Am I correct with that?
Yeah,
Which is 500.
but where's the hardship in that?
Very, well, no, I'm just saying, having a two-car garage, going from a three-car garage to a two-car with a snowplow, a lawnmower.
There's no
this
3-car
will-
garage.
No,
Oh.
personally going from a three-car down, it takes up a lot of room. If we're going to allow our variance, talking a foot and a half, the extra indoor space, I think, becomes very valuable. Thank you.
Giving them a variance,
What's that?
if we have a variance, if we're going to approve a variance, I'd be in the position of giving it to them instead of knocking the foot and a half off, because you'd be hurting that accessory apartment. The closet, you'd be shaving it up, it would tighten it up too much.
And the accessory apartment was only, what, 530 feet?
Yes.
Yeah, that's not that big.
Okay.
What was the articulated hardship? Madam Chairwoman is trying to find a way to make this work without,
Without a variance. Putting it on the other side of the house would not have allowed for the entrance required for an in-law space.
It would still require a variance as well.
Okay, well, our thoughts are on the table, if anyone would like.
Yeah, if we, you'd go to a one-car garage, and then you'd have to, change the accessory apartment and take some of the back out.
I mean, there's a lot of room behind the proposed
point.
addition until you get to the rear setback.
Yeah.
I mean, there's room. I feel like you can add square footage in the back.
They could add square footage to the back of the in-law, yeah.
But if, adjacent neighbor, he's got the back of the adjacent house with what looks to be at least 30 feet off of the boundary. So cutting,
And none of the adjoining neighbor's not in disagreement with this, right?
nice big lot.
No.
There was that one letter in
But she was
opposition.
across the street on
Yeah.
Shamrock, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So really, flooding's not even going to affect her, what they're doing.
right, exactly.
No, the next door neighbor supports it.
Well, if the next-door neighbor doesn't have a problem, I don't have a problem.
I'm okay with it. I get the point, though. If we modify a variance and eliminate half, I like going down that road. In this situation, though, it would hurt them, hurt the accessory apartment to the point we either kill it or give it to them.
But I think you can recoup that square footage by extending further in the rear yard.
Yeah.
But-
Maintain it and
Whatever
go farther
you
back.
guys want
Yeah,
to do.
that's a good
If you want to
point.
cut the garage down to 22 feet and let them extend it back further in the garage, in the backyard, to pick up the square footage.
Yeah, you got 40 feet back there.
Yeah.
Good point.
What's the rear yard setback, Stephen, 25?
25.
It's not a corner lot.
So that dashed line is the set, oh, wait,
Right,
Is the
that's where it
setback.
should be.
So. Okay,
It's here,
and there's
Bill.
40 feet now, so they could actually go back another 15 feet if they wanted.
As proposed, they're 46.3 feet to the rear lot line, the setback's 25. So they have a lot of elbow room.
You got a pool over there, but I don't know if that would,
Removable.
right. I'm okay with it.
I just want to caution the board against granting variances without articulated hardships, as much as we want to help the community. We can find creative ways to still, and that's what I think Madam Chairwoman's point is there are creative ways to meet the planning and zoning regs without asking for variance when there is no hardship.
And this is a good example. You got a ton of room back there.
Well, for the garage, you got to go to at least 8.5 feet, so, from the 6.5 feet. So you got to go to at least 22 foot wide. I mean, otherwise it's, you're going to have to go buy some compact cars.
You're not getting a two-car.
Sure, and, while I would like to eliminate the variance request altogether, I think that's a compromise.
That's a happy compromise,
Yeah.
I mean.
Right. So we need a motion.
I make a motion to approve.
Wait, sorry. I don't think the hearing's been closed.
Oh, yeah.
No, I
We
did.
closed.
I did.
Yep, we closed.
I did.
Okay, I make a motion to approve with the condition that the garage goes from 24 feet wide to 22 feet wide with a single 18-foot door.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Mr. Wolf?
I'm with the motion.
Mr. Soto?
With the motion.
Ms. Hirsch?
With the motion.
Mr. Montano?
With the motion.
I'm with the motion. Thank you. Okay. Those are all of our hearings for tonight. Do we have any new business? Any applications for next month?
There's, Attorney Lynch indicated he's got quite a few coming through, and there's going to be the 114 Merwin.
Sure.
So it could be a long one next time, too.
Okay, any old business?
Yeah.
Same property. It's June, I think we heard it in June. There's another. No, but that was a zoning permit. What? Oh, yes. Motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to
Everyone in
adjourn.
favor?
Second.
Everyone in favor? Aye. Meeting adjourned.